The specific starting points of the city of Rome are still to some degree a secret. There are a few speculations, all dependent on the compositions of old creators and the archaeological disclosures. For this reason, the establishing of Rome depends primarily on legend and fantasy, rather than strong statistical data points. The presence of a Roman kingdom was even addressed during basically 2 centuries by master history specialists. During the 19th and 20th century, they excused the possibility of the early lords of Rome, Romulus, Numa Pompilius, Tullus Hostilius, just as the date of the establishing of what might later turn into the capital of Italy, in 753 BC. This piece of history was only viewed as a legend and not treated appropriately. It was only during the late 20th century when, on account of the discoveries of various archaeological burrows and different sciences, that the legends encompassing the foundation of the city and its first rulers were re-evaluated. It is accepted that the primary occupants of Rome came from different pieces of the area, and had neither the monetary nor the social improvement of their northern neighbors, the Etruscans, nor the southern human advancement called the Sabines and Latins. In the Palatine Hill, archaeologists found the remaining parts of a crude settlement from the 8th century BC, with entombments on the edges of the town. It is imagined that as the populace developed, the occupants chose the inclines of the close-by slopes, and during the following century they set up themselves in the valley. Romulus and Remus. The legend of Romulus and Remus. Rumors have spread far and wide suggesting that Ascanio, child of the Trojan hero Aeneas, child of Venus and Anchises, established the city of Alba Longa on the correct bank of the stream Tiber. A large number of Aeneas descendants ruled this settlement calmly. At the point when Nimetor was top dog, his sibling Amulius held onto the force and deposed Nimetor, slaughtering his male beneficiaries and compelling his little girl, Rhea Silvia, to turn into a Vestal virgin with the goal that she would not give a male beneficiary to the seat. Nevertheless, Rhea Silvia brought forth twins, Romulus and Remus, whose father was believed to be Mars, the divine force of war. Amulius detained the little girl and sentenced the infants to death by suffocating in the stream Tiber. Be that as it may, the worker accountable for the undertaking had compassion for them and rather positioned the twins into a bushel and pushed them down the river Tiber. They were securely conveyed to the region of the 7 slopes. There, the young men were found by a she-wolf called Lupa, who breastfed them in her den in Palatine Hill until they were found by a shepherd and his better half, who raised them as shepherds. As grown-ups, Romulus and Remus were 2 characteristic conceived pioneers, and in a battle slaughtered King Amulius and re-established Nimetor as Lord of Alba Longa. Trying to set up their own settlement, Romulus at last constructed a divider around the Palatine Hill, the area he had decided for the establishing Rome. When looking for the ideal area for their new city, the twins meandered across the 7 slopes: Aventine, Celio, Capitol, Esquiline, Palatine, Quirinal and Viminal. Remus wished to begin the city on the Aventine Hill, while Romulus favored the Palatine Hill. To choose which sibling was right, they consented to council divination, where birds are analyzed to perceive what the divine beings supported. Remus professed to have seen 6 birds, while his sibling had seen 12. Despite the fact that Romulus had seen more birds, Remus contended that he had seen him first, and in this way the city ought to be based on the Aventine Hill. In the meantime, Romulus started to construct a divider on his slope, which Remus chose to bounce over. Angered by his sibling's activity, Romulus killed him. According to the legend, this occurred in 754 BC. The legend of Aeneas. As indicated by another legend, the Trojan sovereign, Aeneas, arrived at the Italian coast and wedded Lavinia, the girl of King Latinus, in this manner turning out to be above all else. This fantasy isn't just told by Greek students of history. However, it is protected in Italy, contrasted with different legends that give Rome an Arcadian starting point, identified with the fantasy of Evandro, or Achaean, identified with Odysseus or Ulysses. The fantasy of Aeneas gives Rome a heavenly and Greek establishing. Tragically, the legend of Aeneas is preposterous, as Troy was obliterated in 1200 BC. Ancient Roman monarchy. Discover the state of Rome's first political model, which was a monarchical form of government, from 753 BC until 509 BC. The most accepted date for the foundation of Rome is 753 BC. The first form of government in Rome was monarchical according to the archaeological findings and the legends. In the excavations carried out in the Roman Forum, in the Regia, which was the former royal residence, a glass of Bucero was found dating from the 7th century with the inscription Rex, King. The word Rege was also found on the lapis niger, an ancient shrine in the Roman Forum. An inscription found beneath the black marble is considered to be a law. It is also possible to make out when Rome was a kingdom thanks to other institutions in the Lazio region. For example, the Rex Nemorensis, king of the forest, a priest of the goddess Diana who looked after the forests from the 6th century BC until the Roman Empire. Curiosity, the Romans would maintain the same institutions throughout the centuries, transforming the roles of those in charge to suit the period. In this case, during the Roman Republic, the figure of the Rex Sacrorum, king of the sacred, substituted the king figure, but was only given religious functions. Romulus, son of the god of war and the daughter of the king Numita, was the first king of Rome and also its founder, thus the city was called after him. He formed the Roman Senate with 100 men and gave the inhabitants of Rome a body of laws. From a village to a city after founding the city, Romulus invited merchants and men of all kinds to settle in Palatine Hill. To increase the female population and give Rome's inhabitants wives, he abducted Sabine women. As a consequence, the Sabine king, Titus Tatius, attacked Rome and took the capital. Finally, Romulus shared the kingship of the city with Titus Tatius until his death. The list of the 7 kings of Rome, or 8 if we include Titus Tatius, is as follows: Romulus, Numa Pompilius, Tullus Hostilius, Ancus Marcius, Tarquinius Priscus, Servius Tullius, Tarquinius Superbus. No historian doubts the existence of the last 3 kings, since there is clear evidence of their reigns in Rome. Nowadays, it is also believed that the first 3 kings of Rome also existed. Certain historians argue that the name of these 7 kings dates back to when the first Roman historians, in the 3rd century BC, wrote about the origins of Rome, which would confirm them to be true. The Roman Republic was installed after the Roman kingdom was overthrown in 509 BC and lasted until 27 BC. One of the most important figures of this period is Julius Caesar. A number of important events took place at the end of the Roman kingdom and beginning of the Roman Republic. In 509 BC, King Lucius Tarquinius Superbus was overthrown by the noblemen of Rome. The king of Clusium, Lars Porsena, sieged Rome. The city signed a treaty of support with Carthage, the temple of Jupiter Capitolinus was consecrated and a new office, called consul, was created. The Fasti Consulares, documents with the names of the consuls or magistrates that describe the main events of the period, are essential to understand the Roman Republic from 503 BC, from when they are considered credible. Another very important method used to understand this period of Roman history is the ritual of the Clavis Annalis. This practice began 1 year after the temple of Jupiter Capitolinus was consecrated, and it consisted in fixing a bronze nail to the right of the altar once a year. The first nail was placed in 508 BC. The temple of Jupiter Capitolinus had the cellar of Jupiter, as well as the cellar of Minerva and Juno. The decade after 509 BC, the year when the last king of Rome was dethroned, while he was away from Rome, is a dark period and very little is known, only isolated events. Transition to the Roman Republic. The transition of Rome from a monarchy to a republic led to severe internal social tensions. This lack of control over the city led neighboring tribes to siege the city and reduce its power. This is why Rome had to ratify its identity in numerous occasions during the first 70 years of the Republic. The early years of the Republic are of political turmoil. The population was divided, certain wanted a monarchy, others a republic, others favored the king of Clusium, Lars Porsena, and others wanted to form part of the Latin civilization. The nobles who had overthrown the king and his family had not come to an agreement regarding the type of government that would replace the monarchy. The consuls, which would later replace the leadership of the Roman kings, was not put in place immediately, but many years later. Many historians believe that in the first stages of the Roman Republic, a praetor maximus was appointed for 1 year only. Later his duties would be split in two by choosing 2 consuls at a time to govern Rome. This form of government went on until 449 BC, with the Valeria Horaria law. The position of chief magistrate was not exclusively for the patres, who formed the Roman Senate, and controlled the army and the priests since the time of Romulus, as there is evidence that shows plebeians, common civilians, becoming consuls up until 485 BC. The political instability led the strongest factions to form alliances between themselves. From 485 BC, the patricians no longer allowed commoners to take part in the government and began to control all civil and religious matters. Roman law, as well as the constant rivalry between patricians and plebeians, the Republic is also known as a period in which the power of Rome reached the whole peninsula of Italy, and Roman law was founded with the law of the 12 Tables in 450 BC. Moreover, it is also a period when many wars took place for equality between the Roman inhabitants. The 12 Tables were written up to appease the demands of the commoners. Until the tables were written, the Roman law was considered sacred, for having been established by the monarchy and pontiffs. By putting it on paper, it became the basis of all laws in the Western world. Between the years 133 BC and 27 BC, Rome suffered from great internal tensions, leading to numerous civil wars. The Gracco brothers, who proposed a series of laws in favor of the plebeians, also led to a social crisis in Rome. Dictatorship. Transition from the Republic to the Roman Empire. Sylla, dictator between the years 82 to 79 BC, greatly influenced politics in Rome at the time, concentrating all the political power in the hands of the Senate. To sustain the empire, the Senate was forced to choose a natural-born leader, a general, who also understood politics, to rule the people. During this period, the plebeians wanted to seize the power, which led the dictator to be given more political power to ensure that they wouldn't seize the control of Rome. This personalism resulted in a triumvirate political regime and the dictatorships of Julius Caesar and Augustus. A new form of government began in Rome, the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was founded when Augustus Caesar proclaimed himself the first emperor of Rome in 31 BC and came to an end with the fall of Constantinople in 1453 CE. An empire is a political system in which a group of people are ruled by a single individual, an emperor or empress. The Roman Empire began with the reign of Emperor Augustus. The power of the Senate was limited and became an organ to support the emperor. The period between Augustus and Diocletian is called High Empire, while the Low Empire is the era between Diocletian and the fall of the Roman Empire in the West. The Roman Empire at its territorial peak between the years 14 and 68, the heirs of Augustus succeeded him: Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius and Nero. This dynastic succession was interrupted when Emperor Nero died and a civil war broke out in the year 68. 3 emperors fought for the power, and finally the war was won by Vespasian, part of the Flavian dynasty. The Flavian dynasty was succeeded by the Antonines, 96 to 193, a generic name given to Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antoninus Pius, Marcus Aurelius and Commodus. These emperors had a very similar policy to the Flavians. The accession of Septimius Severus, 197 to 235, made him the first of the imperial Severan dynasty to rule, 197 to 235. He was replaced by Caracalla, Macrinus, Elagabalus and Alexander Severus. The absolute power of Rome, capital of the empire, was weakened over time. Between 235 and 300, Rome's only priority was to defend its borders from the continuous attacks by the barbarians and from the Sasanians, from Persia. The pressure of these raids prompted the army to assume power in 235. This era is known as the military anarchy and lasted about 50 years. The emperors of this time had one sole purpose: fighting the empire's enemies and securing the borders. As a consequence of these constant wars, the army was very expensive to maintain, and thus the empire became crippled with debts. This in turn impoverished the population and many lost their identity and values. Many put in doubt their religious beliefs, especially with the arrival of new doctrines from the East. The persecution of an ever-growing Christian minority by Diocletian was a way to rid the empire of the dangers it was facing. In 284 a military revolt saved the empire and Diocletian was proclaimed emperor. During his rule he instaured the tetrarchy, a form of government that divided the power. Diocletian designated the general Maximian to take charge of the western regions of the empire, while the emperor governed over the eastern regions. Years later, he would appoint two Caesars. Diocletian abdicated in 305, revealing that the tetrarchic political system didn't work without someone to lead it. The Low Empire, 305 AD to 476 AD, after the abdication of Diocletian in 305, a series of conflicts took place until 312, when Constantine became the sole emperor of the West. He was to be the last emperor of the unified empire. He instituted Christianity as the official religion of the empire. The capital of the empire is moved to the ancient city of Byzantium, which is reconstructed. Byzantium, from the 8th of November 324, is renamed Constantinople or the city of Constantine. Constantine's successor, Theodosius, divided the empire between his two sons Arcadius and Honorius, creating the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire. The Western Roman Empire falls in 476. Meanwhile, the other half, called the Byzantine Empire, survives until 1453 with the decline of Constantinople, now called Istanbul.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to Life is Often if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.